Hello, and welcome back to the Heart of Truth podcast. I'm your host, Amanda, and we have a really juicy subject to dive into today. New Age cults. So, I have an incredibly beautiful guest here to share about her experience of being in a New Age cult. And we're going to get into the nuances here because this is not how they start out, right? So, Gigi Allen is a divine feminine embodiment mentor, and we're going to hear her story. So, Gigi, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. So it's a
Yeah.
big moment to finally be sharing this.
Yeah, I feel that. It's not easy to talk about these things when we're fresh out of it, or certainly not when we're in the midst of it. And it takes time to really get back into ourselves and be able to share these stories. So, thank you. It's an honor for allowing me to be the vessel to bring this story forward. So, all right, let's dive in. How did you enter the cult? Obviously, it was not a cult when you were brought in. So, can you share your experience of what it was like in the beginning?
Yeah, so I would have never thought this would be a part of my storyline. Before I joined this group, I had about 5 months earlier just left my marriage of 11 years. I had a 1 and 4 year old. I also left my career in advertising and marketing after 15 years. So there was so much change happening. I had already gone through what was the start of like a very significant awakening. I had gone through some many ones in my adult life, but this was the one that I knew it was like there's no turning back. And I had done some work on myself. I was very committed and devoted, but I knew there was more. And I knew that I had blind spots. And so I started to call in a teacher.
Mm.
I could feel there was somebody near, and I just started praying that I wanted a teacher to come in to help me move through some of these blocks that I couldn't see myself. I couldn't get myself through.
Yeah.
So it didn't take long. And I came across an Instagram account, and the name struck me because it was had to do with 5D, and I was just starting to explore, okay, what is 5D? So it got my attention. One thing led to another. We connected. I ended up doing a session, and the session that was supposed to be an hour turned into 6 hours over Zoom.
6 hours.
6 hours.
Wow.
And during that time, uh, the shaman, the woman that led this group, just quickly jumped into our soul connection and what they were doing, what they were starting to create, and had a very strong sense I was to be a part of this. And I had known for a while that I was here to do something different than where my path had taken me in more of a traditional sense. And so it was like, oh my gosh, someone's seeing me finally, right? And someone uh, has this incredible mission that I can be a part of, and I can add value and purpose into the world. So that's how it initially began.
Mm-hmm.
And then I signed up to be a part of one of the retreats, and that ended up getting not happening. So we shifted it into more session work, and then they invited me to be actually start working with them as part of their team. And the whole concept was we were going to have retreat centers all over the world. This was the big vision, and
Mm-hmm.
we would be filming like a media production company, people's journey through their own self discovery and shadow work, and coming into more of their true self.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it went from working with them as a client, starting to do work for them. And then it was only within maybe a few months, they were in California. They ended up leaving California to come to Kansas City, which is where I'm from. And they were going to be here for 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turned into a year and a half. And I quickly went all in, supporting their business and being a part of this, what we called soul family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how it began.
Wow. So, yeah, this is really fascinating. And I did a tiny bit of research into the psychology of cults and the cult leaders before this episode because it popped right up. And I was like, well, this will be perfect to really anchor it in. And what you've shared already is seems like hallmark how they put their tentacles in. So it's
Yes.
like, so first, that 6 hour session, wow, that probably felt okay. So you were in a very vulnerable space in your life, obviously, fresh out of a divorce, fresh out of leaving your job. Those are huge.
Mhm.
Each one unto themselves is a huge transition. So it's like you were vulnerable and seeking and open. And it's like they hooked their tentacles right in and
Mhm.
immediately made you probably feel, well, super seen. You said that yourself. And with a 6 hour session, you probably felt like did you feel like you were kind of special that they gave so much time to you?
Oh, absolutely. That was one of, I would say, one of the biggest strategies I can now see. And I even witnessed it.
Yeah.
I could see how she would treat some of the other people. And then I was like, wow, like it was like a love bomb.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's another phrase that was coming through. It's like love bombing seems to be this kind of gateway drug into
Mhm.
the cult, into the community. It's a community first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because we,
Yeah.
at the most basic sense, we all want to feel connected and like we belong.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so when somebody or a group of people come in and it's like what feels like love and support and being seen, it's just like, you're all of a sudden you're getting filled up in ways you haven't, especially when you're in a very vulnerable position
Yeah.
and so green. When you're leaving,
Mhm.
I'm just going to, for easy way of describing this, everything you've known in the matrix and you start to
Mhm.
open up a different door and you're really new to it and people come in to go, let me show you what this is all about, and with
Mhm.
glitter and speaking of these big grandiose ideas, and they can very clearly see where your wounding is and
Mm.
use that to manipulate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating because in that session, she probably had you opening up a lot and being vulnerable. And so then she was able to subtly or overtly, I don't really know how it progressed, but be able to use all of those vulnerabilities and hook in ever so slightly, ever so subtly over time,
Mhm.
would be my guess as to how that actually operated.
Absolutely. Sometimes
Yeah.
it was very subtle, sometimes it was overt enough that it got my attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just, when your body goes, huh? Like, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think one of the biggest, there's so many lessons within this experience, discernment being one of them,
Yeah.
and learning how to really pay attention from the very start when something, even if it's very, very subtle in the body, that's saying something's not right here, to trust yourself
Yes. 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 It
or to
seems
at
like,
least get more curious and not just go, oh, they must be right, and give your
hmm,
power away.
yeah, it seems like that is, it's not just so. One comment that I saw, can't take credit for this insight, but it was that these cults are basically a macro version of narcissism.
Mhm.
And, what the same kind of patterns of behavior that we see on the micro interpersonal one on one type narcissistic relationships, it's happening on a group level. And so it's like these same kind of hooks and cords and tentacles and gaslighting manipulation tactics are utilized to get people to give away their sovereignty, to give away their power, to give away their life, really, to the cult.
Uh, yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, it
Yeah.
was narcissistic behavior in at its finest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Which
It's
was
and
so interesting because, so much of what was shared was like all about unconditional love and loving all and sovereignty and even though the language was spoken, at the core of it, that was the opposite of what was actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I in my past few episodes, I have been speaking into the dark side of spirituality and these manipulation tactics and the glossy facades of these quote unquote gurus, and how there's this false light overlay where they say the right things
Yeah.
and it sounds beautiful. Like the vision of that project sounds really beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous retreats around the world, having people sharing their experiences of transformation to uplift and inspire. That's a beautiful vision. I could totally
Yes.
see how you'd want to support that. But
Yeah.
underlying it was really just this grasping for control and power.
Power was a big part of it, and greed,
Greed.
and wanting to
Mm-hmm.
be in the spotlight, wanting to
Mm-hmm.
be worshipped, really, wanting
Mm.
to be on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's interesting to me. I maybe just because of the episode that I would just released this week as we're recording on the Dark Mother, but that it was a female leader of
Mhm.
this cult.
Yeah, so it was, yes, she was the lead. She also had a partner. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
married, but he also did similar support. They had their own gifts, but they would often
Mm-hmm.
work together. But she was definitely the lead of it, and behind the whole group, she was driving everything.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So to me, she's embodying this dark mother dynamic, which is actually when you really dive super deep into these networks of control that are driving all of this negative energy like all of humanity, really
Mhm.
macro level perspective. It's really the dark mother behind the patriarchy. She's kind of manipulating and controlling like the puppet master in the background.
Yeah,
So it's really fascinating. She's like the epitome personification, it sounds like, this woman, of that energy.
yeah, and she. I think most of us have some type of mother wounding.
Hmm.
And at times she would just very much come into fill that space where we were looking like for our moms to be,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was always with the intention to like trust me and then
Hmm.
let me control and manipulate and take advantage. And there was emotional abuse, there was a lot of, it's so wild because when I think back, I'm like, the version I was stepping into that, I would have never believed I could have been in that situation and stayed in something like that.
Yeah.
So it is very sneaky and tricky when you start getting different wounds activated, and it was almost like I was under anesthesia.
So wild.
And it would be like I would see the patterns in the cycle and I'd be like, "Whoa." And I'd be like, "This is not okay." And then something would happen. A lot of times I would speak up because
Mm,
I often am the truth teller.
yeah.
And one of the tactics that was used was she would bring other people in as kind of her army to say, look at what Gigi's saying. Let's all go around the room and talk about actually what's at play here and how her shadow is, coming out, and it's not really me, or it's not really this, it's her. So we were kept deep, deep, deep doing shadow work, which,
Yeah.
as you know, it's important. We have to do the shadow work, but we're not meant to stay down there. We need to come up and we need to integrate and we need to bring lightness in. And we were kept
Yes.
deep in the shadows.
Wow. Yeah, that's really fascinating. It's like that whole energy of false light is to keep people in these loops of healing, and it's a karmic trap. It's a karmic loop trap, really. It's like
Yes.
this idea that you have to keep healing, that you're never healed. That's part of the false light and the false ascension. So, a hallmark of a false guru or a cult leader.
Yeah, because then that cult leader or that group, or you're always needed.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's
Mm-hmm.
never going to end. So you have to keep doing the work, and you can't trust yourself. So you
Yeah.
need somebody else outside of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Like all of these are such classic hallmarks of not just the guru, but the cult leader. It's like giving away your sovereignty and becoming completely dependent upon them and the group. And obviously, she was trying to isolate you to trigger those abandonment wounds so that you would then stay quiet and
Right.
shut down your truth. Was really what she was doing, was having you enter this space of questioning yourself and questioning your own truth and giving your power away to this truth that's external to you, that's not actually higher truth.
Yeah, she wanted our truth to be the truth she was dictating.
Yeah, the truth
Yeah.
she was dictating. That's a good line.
Yeah. And so we were
Mm-hmm.
really, that is the potential harm of having community, and when you get into group think and you lose your own critical thinking, your own sovereignty and what you believe in, that I think is often what happens. It's like all this like starts to blend, and then you're like you can't see up from down, right from left. It becomes very disorienting.
Yeah, yeah. Um, sorry, there is this bizarre dinging outside all of a
It's just
sudden.
spirit saying yes. That's
Yes,
right.
yes, yes. But yeah, what was really coming through right there was this idea of there is a very fine line between spiritual initiation, because yes, we have to do the shadow work, and then psychological manipulation, and then giving your power over to these groupthink dynamics. And it's like we all have these beautiful visions of beautiful high vibe new earth communities, but like when the leader themselves is operating in this hierarchical distortion, it's really going to siphon from the entire community and have people giving away their sovereignty. And I feel like this is actually a perfect segue into, if you feel like getting into it, how it wasn't just energetic, it was actually material. How, and this is a classic cult like dynamic too, to not just give your energy and time, but to give so much of your life in the very tangible way to the group for the higher good of the group, and to
Yeah.
then give it away.
Yeah, there was so much sacrifice that was asked of us, and it was financially. I contributed close to six figures over the year and a half. I was at times taking care of my own, paying for my own house, my children and everything else, but also paying for the house that we rented, a 10,000 square foot house, where everyone else lived, and helping with business expenses and food and whatever. And that would flow from month to month. And so that was, a huge thing to take on. And there was times I remember, I mean, I was draining from, at first it started slow and I was very careful. And then the more I got into it,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, well, I can't turn back now. I've already invested so much. And it just got to be more and more and more. It was never enough. It was always promised, oh, this is the month it's all going to take off. This is the time it's all going to take off. Oh, we just have to do this and this is going to explode. And I would see, no, this is not happening. And then all of a sudden something would come in that would kind of like, boost spirits of like, oh yeah, we're starting to get momentum. And then it never would pan out. So, and then during that time, I was also in a custody battle with my ex.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was very, very dense in the court system, for 2 years, and this was also during COVID. So yeah, there was a lot going on at the time, and then we were also doing sadhana, and you're waking up 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we would be working on the business all day long. But as we would be working on the business, if someone's ego was out of place, we would stop everything, go into circle and hash it out. So it was so draining. And
Mm,
we would be getting messages on WhatsApp at 4 o'clock in the morning where she was just, what the hell is this? It was changing directions, yelling at us for not doing something. Our nervous systems were fried.
Ooh, yeah. That's what was coming up for me when you said first the custody, then also this was all happening during COVID. It's like, what was that doing to your nervous system? All of these things. And when your nervous system is rattled, when it's fried, like
Yeah.
you cannot stand in your sovereignty as easily.
No, absolutely not. And then you put on top of that, like, just how much deep I was doing so much, bringing up so much from my past, doing so much shadow work and releasing trauma. So I was at max capacity. There was times I was okay, but there was other times during that period that, I was like a shell of myself, and I was holding so much of the different burdens that
Mm.
was for this group, but also just in my own personal life as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's wild, honestly, to consider all of this. All of it happening at once, but how those subtle inversion dynamics, they can be very subtle at first, especially when you're in that vulnerable spot and your nervous system isn't regulated and it's wearing this beautiful mask, this beautiful facade, a costume that
Mhm.
seems divine and high vibe, and we're doing this for a greater purpose. You're in service to higher good by giving your energy away to this, but what they're really probably doing is siphoning and looshing off of all that trauma release, whatever energies are working through them. That's how it works, right? They get people to go into fear, and they get people to release trauma, and they loosh off of that energy. So it's just like, this is such a good I'm so sorry that you went through it, but it's such a good case study of exactly how these dynamics can work. And I'm just seeing a lot of reflections of certain other individuals that are, kind of publicly in the sphere right now.
Mhm.
And the same dynamics working through those people, this kind of larger than life energy of the guru,
Yeah,
of the
like
teacher.
charismatic
Mm-hmm.
influencer, and it is just can be extremely sneaky. It's when you get into false light, it's like truth, lie, truth, and then you're like, and it can be just kind of sneak right in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we come from a world where, like, we've celebrated all these celebrities and idolize them. And in the new age spiritual community, it's really has it's kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to make sure, that we're not just repeating where we've come from. It's just dressed up differently. Like, that is
Mm-hmm.
not the purpose of where we're moving right now.
Exactly, exactly. So, yeah, it's the same hierarchical dynamic of pedestalizing the stars, the celebrities, and then we have all this starseed galactic channeler kind of energy that I'm thinking of now, and it's really no different. The spiritual celebrities, and some people might wind up having platforms and influence because they have really beautiful teachings and codes to share, but it's like, what's the frequency and energy behind it? Is
Mhm.
a huge distinction there.
Yeah.
So, and
Like,
it's
what
subtle.
work have they really done? What
Mm-hmm.
shadow work on themselves have they really done? What have they really experienced? There's one thing, it is one thing to go read all the books, gain the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But until it's actually, you have lived through it, you have integrated, you have embodied it, I'm not interested in learning from you on those aspects.
Yeah, yeah. Same, same. I think that's the key distinction that also enables a level of discernment to read the field, to read
Mhm.
the energy underlying the dynamics. If you haven't gone through these initiations, it's going to be a lot harder to read that energy. Everybody's journey is a bit different, but I feel at this point that the ones that have dealt with the most shit on this path are actually the ones who are meant to be stepping forward into positions of quote unquote leadership,
Mhm.
because we've actually had to walk through the flames and the fires of initiation and do that inner alchemy, because we were forced to, and of course our souls chose that. But it's, there's a humbling that comes on the path, and it's opening when you first start, because I can totally resonate with, first having this like big awakening, like my bigger awakening, where I was like, oh my gosh, and I thought I had it all figured out, and I was just like,
Yeah, I know how
love
that
and
goes.
light, this is the
I made
answer.
it.
Yeah. But I was also in a space of just trusting everybody that spoke that language.
Yeah.
And I got hooked into, in my own way, it wasn't a cult, but yeah, it's so insidious, it's so subtle.
Mhm.
So, you've kind of touched on this, but can you get a little deeper now into, when you started to feel like things were off and things weren't resonating, and you spoke into how like they would bring you into circle and kind of try to talk you down. But when did you really start to pull back and like notice what was shifting? Like, what was it for you that really finally kind of flipped the
Yeah.
switch?
I mean, there was many times it crossed my mind, like, do I need to pull out of here?
Mm,
But very clever how I would get pulled back in over and over and over again.
mm, mm-hmm,
It was, I believe, in January of 2021. At this point, I had drained 401k,
wow.
credit card, savings, and it was really starting to go down where she started planting to the seed that you may need to sell your house. And she dressed it up in different ways, and I was very, for a while, resistant, because this was my house I purchased after my divorce. It was like, I want to be here forever, so I was just like, oh
Mm-hmm,
god, I don't want to have to do that. And then I realized I'm going to have to do that, so I put my house on the market. It sold very quickly. So then I had, whatever it was, 60 days to pack up and move out. And so that created more space because I had to start packing. I had to start dealing with stuff at the house. So I
mm-hmm,
wasn't there as much as I had been.
mm-hmm,
And so during that time, things were even becoming more clear to me. I was even seeing her without the mask on. I would
mm-hmm.
see, I remember there was a time I even saw her eyes like go black,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and she went, like, me seeing her was, she went a bit crazy and pulled everyone in to bring me down again. So I
Mm,
was really at this point just getting beaten down. Like every time I'd go there, it was like never enough, whatever I was doing. I was getting in trouble, all the things. And it was becoming clear, all right, I know what's going to happen is I'm going to sell my house. I'm going to get this. I had a good amount of equity in it,
mm-hmm.
and they're going to want me to keep shelling out.
Yeah.
And I've seen what just happened, and I can't do
Mm-hmm.
that. And so I was moving in that direction, but I was keeping it to myself mostly.
Yeah.
And there was just a few things that were happening that I was, even the people in the group, I was like, they're so in it. Like I felt like I was the outsider. Like I have to just walk this path by myself. And so I remember I had a call with a woman locally who does Akashic Records. And I told her what I wanted her to check into. And immediately she was like, oh no, honey, you do not need them. They need you. They have been feeding off of you this whole time.
Yeah.
And that was enough. I knew, like, this was my exit. And I remember like coming out and telling my mom she had been watching the kids, and she was just like so relieved because she had watched this go down.
Mm,
And so I planned my exit. I had so much stuff at their house that I'd let them
mm,
borrow. And I knew we were renting from this gentleman. I was the contact, and he was actually trying to sell the house, and there was a showing. So I
mm,
told my mom, let's go when there's a showing and we'll get all
mm-hmm.
my stuff. And then I'll send a note on WhatsApp to let them know this chapter's over. I knew I couldn't just say it to them because they'd
Yeah.
pull me right back in. And
Yeah.
at this point, I was like, I have to protect myself. I have to protect my kids and the rest of the money I have left and be done with this.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And
It's
since then, uh, everyone left. It was like kind of the catalyst, and then little by little, each person started to drop off.
Because they didn't have a primary source to be feeding off of.
Yeah, and I think also just it helped each of them start to question, like,
Yeah.
is this the environment I want to be in? Is this what I want to be creating and spending my time every day putting my energy into? Is this
Mhm.
healthy? Does this feel good?
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. As you're like the pillar of truth, the pillar of light, that once it left, all the shadows were exposed and people, it's like your light was being siphoned.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they could see more clearly like, hey, something's not quite right, because it felt like you were kind of like one of the anchors for the whole community, the cult. um
Yeah. I think she really targeted very open heart, pure hearts
Yeah.
that are
Mhm.
used to just like giving and giving and sacrificing. And that was,
Mhm.
part of what she saw, like, okay, this is how I can build what I want to build and get what I want to get.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's classic, like targeting that, like the pure open heart. Like we do like to give and we will over sacrifice
Mhm.
ourselves. And so part of our lesson is to take our energy back from these dynamics and to hold those boundaries firm. But then we're often seen as the bad guys when we do that, because they're used to siphoning our energy from us. But
Works.
yeah, yeah, it's really interesting because what was coming to mind is when you were packing everything up, I was like, this is literally like escaping an abuser.
Yeah. We, my mom and I parked on a side street waiting for them to exit. And then I was like, all right, let's go. And then we drove over and just filled the
Wow.
cars. And what was so interesting is they ended up moving to Costa Rica 2 months later,
Mm-hmm.
which was always their dream, was to move to some location and start a retreat center there. And the week before they left, I went into a big local gym. And as soon as I parked, I was like, they're here. I can feel it. They're here. And it was like straight out of a movie. As soon as I entered the women's locker room, the head leader walking straight towards me. And I took a right to go to the bathroom, and I was like, all right, what do I want to do? Okay, I'm just showing up. Like, she wants to dodge me, fine, but I'm going to just, be here.
Yeah.
And I ended up running into every single person that was in, like, it really was. It was out of a movie. Like, I went into this like large sauna, and there her partner was, and it was just him and I in this massive sauna. And I didn't even realize it at first. And then I was like, oh my God, he's right here. It was pretty wild.
Oh my God, you can't even make that
And
up. You
then, no.
can't. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Gosh, I'm just kind of like letting that settle, letting it all process. It's just all the dynamics wrapped up in one, all the false light energies, all of the predatorial, spiritual, narcissistic, spiritual egos wrapped up into a cult like dynamic. And, you know, can you share with us how big this was, how big this cult was? It
Yeah.
wasn't that big, right?
No, it wasn't that big. I would say there was a core group that was typically around like 10 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes other people would come in, sometimes people would leave. And then there was a pretty large community that some of them had been around for years following this group.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was like kind of this outer circle that weren't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, living in this house or working closely on the business, but they were still very much a part of the community.
Mm-hmm. So there's like the inner circle and then the larger, broader outer
Yeah.
circle community. Yeah, really
There was probably
fascinating.
like, I don't know, 15 to 20,000 on Instagram that was following the group.
Oh, that's a sizable following,
Yeah.
and they were all probably feeding the energy in their own way, if
Yeah.
not.
And we were very active, creating a lot of content.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's one of the ways that like your energy was siphoned too. You weren't paid to give your energy to, yeah, that seems like a hallmark of the cults as well. It's like services that in other situations you would be compensated for. You don't get paid for it. It's expected as a contribution to the mission, to the community.
Well, what was served up to me was, how would you like to make, you know, $500,000 a year, or if you want to
Mm,
be a founder and it could look like this. And so the way that it was twisted and how far along
mm-hmm,
the business was definitely contorted.
mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I had come from a career where I was making close to $200,000, and then I worked free for them for a year and a half. And then on top of that, provided a lot of financial support.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of sacrifice to be
Mhm.
giving that much time, energy, and actual financial resources to this vision, this project. Yeah, I can kind of relate on subtler levels, not as overt and not as extreme,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've seen this play out. I've kind of experienced it on subtle levels myself. It's kind of wild how rampant this is, really, but also how subtle, because it's like, very smart, intelligent, intellectual, experienced people with life experience who would
Mhm.
genuinely, be able to perceive this with other people. It's like once you get those tentacles hooked in, it seems like it's like this energetic veil gets put over you. You can't see it
Yes.
when you're in it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like there'd be times where I'm like, how am I, why am I making this decision? This is
Mm,
so out of alignment. This doesn't feel right.
yeah.
And it was almost like there was like an override. And once I left, there was implants that had to be removed out of my body.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes so much
Many.
sense. Yeah, many.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
makes so much sense. It's like like you can kind of be in the space of questioning, but because you're hooked into so literally, like with literal like implants, you can't actually take that sovereign step of actually exiting or saying no to a
Yeah.
situation.
It's not as easy as you think. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it felt like at times I was pushing up a mountain, and there was so much weight against me. It
Yeah.
was very confusing. It was very disorienting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, from my personal experience, I can relate with that because I had that, that siphon
Mhm.
experience that I shared in a previous episode. It was more of a one-on-one dynamic. But there were times where I completely just like sidestepped the red flags that I could see and just kind of stopped. I was questioning what was happening to me, but then I would just stop questioning. And it felt like this whoosh would come over my energy
Mm.
field sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think never stop questioning. If there's ever anything, just like the slightest little like pause, and
Mm-hmm.
reflect and ask questions. And
Mm-hmm.
I think sacrifice, especially for pure hearts, it's
Mm.
like this maybe badge we feel we have to wear
Yeah.
to prove our goodness or our worth or whatever it may be. And that's just completely false.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
it's really like, uh we're harming ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's like it's similar to this martyrdom complex and this sacrifice template that was placed on humanity. Well, we won't go super deep into this tangent, but you were here with me in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, and we were doing a lot of work with the grids. And one of the things
Right.
that came up for me, and I can't recall if you were feeling into this particular aspect of the template as well, but the sacrifice template that was
Mhm.
anchored in. And part of like a huge part of my work was clearing that, because this is where the cancer was, and it was like right in the high heart. And it's a template that's been placed on humanity. And so when we do the good work, it's for the collective as well, but
Right.
it's this whole template that was placed on us, this overlay to get us to keep sacrificing, tithing to the churches or giving our
Mhm.
energy away or whatever it might be, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild how what is at play that we are not even aware of
Mhm. Mhm.
until all of a sudden the light is shining on it, and
Yeah.
then there's a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such like, and then there's a choice. Such a
Mhm.
good point. It's like, what is the choice you're going to make? Some people might have to repeat the pattern or whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, even after I left this group, I would say 6 months later, I ended up going into a relationship, and there was similar dynamics that played out. Again,
Mhm.
just dressed differently.
Yeah.
So, until we're willing to really get these lessons and integrate and embody them, they're gonna keep coming back around.
Yeah. Yeah. So, would you be willing to share a little bit about what your process was of emotionally detangling from the cult, from the
Mhm.
situation?
Yeah. I mean, this was in 2021. We're in 2025. So,
Yeah.
it really has taken this 4 years for me to
Mhm.
be at a place where I can now I've shared it with people one on one and small groups, but it has taken really that much time and space to be able to share neutrally rather
Mhm.
than it to feel like I had to work through the victim mentality of like, this was done to me,
Yeah.
right? Um, Even I had to work through the seeing that this group was still together and I wasn't, and feeling like
Mm.
left out, the outsider, right?
Mm.
Or what if everything that they said was going to happen happens and now I've pulled myself away from it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that term, when you were speaking about that earlier, sunk costs came through. It's like you've already
Mm,
invested so much time, so much
yeah,
energy. It's so much harder to walk away.
absolutely. That was it, just got deeper and deeper and deeper into that.
Mhm.
Um so there's a lot of things that arose once I left. I think one of the biggest
Mhm.
things is I had to get my nervous system healthy again.
Yeah.
And so once I left, I had the equity from my house and what I made on it. And I just, not receiving like 200 messages on my phone a day was such a blessing. And, every day, slowly but surely, it was still very much like almost as like, what do I need to be doing? What could I be getting in trouble
Mm.
for? And so
Mhm.
I started just be like, okay, how do I want to spend my day to day? What would be
Yeah.
nourishing? What would feel good?
Mhm.
And it took many, many, many months.
Mm.
And just being very present to like what was coming up, whether it was the feelings of like, okay, what if they go to Costa Rica and they're this great success, and all of a sudden I left before the everything we've been working towards happens. I just would be in the moment and just would feel it and witness it and um, process it.
Yeah. So that FOMO was still very present, even though you had walked away and you could see it for what it was. It was still
There was,
there.
yeah, because I think even when I walked away and I knew that's what I needed to do, there's still that you're still kind of in both of those worlds. And it's
Mm.
like there was still a little bit of doubt that I had to work through within my own voice guiding me out of there. And
Mhm.
and there was still a lot of her voice in my head that I had
Mhm.
to detach from and quiet down.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I suppose yeah, connecting that with my experience with the narcissistic abuse, it was similar. I was
Mhm.
doubting myself and questioning myself after blocked all contact kind of thing. Yeah, yeah. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's not always like this shut the door and you're done. Sometimes that may happen, but because of like the deep entanglements, the programming, what we, just there was a lot shared. Now, there was a lot of things that went on that were not okay. But
Mhm.
on the other side of it, I was in this accelerated portal of growth. I
Yeah.
really couldn't be where I am today. They were very good in many ways with the healing work we did and the shadow work.
Mhm.
We also had at times incredible, fun, loving memories and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of adventures. And they helped me walk through a different kind of threshold of leaving the matrix and learning how to trust moment to moment and to be okay with the uncertainty and to really
Mm-hmm.
follow my own path.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there was blessings absolutely that came from it as well.
Well, there was a reason you were drawn to the community in the first place, right? Yeah. So it
Exactly.
it totally makes sense that there's going to be a lot of beautiful aspects to it, and that's what hooks you in. That's what
Yeah.
makes you want to give your energy to it in the first place.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of would you feel like there was like it was a slow evolution, or do you feel like there was kind of a point where they kind of started to shift the dynamic? Or do you think it was just kind of the way the whole thing was operated? There was always this kind of insidious underlying energy that was siphoning.
I feel after like witnessing other people come in after me, I started to notice the pattern that, oh, I see how she works the new people. And she really
Okay.
just like, again, the love bombing. And
Yeah.
it's almost like this show until she's got you in whatever
Mm-hmm.
way that looks, where you're invested and you're committed and then she might come down hard on you at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then the newbies, they'll still be in that coddled energy.
Yes.
So they're going to think that you are the problem still because they're receiving all the love bombing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep, yep. Yeah, classic narcissistic type energy too. Yeah. So it's just fascinating to, make these parallels between just a typical narcissist dynamic, but then expand it out into a group dynamic and how that can really, this is really why no communities have worked until now, I would argue, is because typically the ones who are behind it, there's still some unintegrated shadow or this deeper desire to be seen as the leader, the supreme leader
Yeah.
of the group.
It was so her partner, I remember at one point I was at the house and they got into some big fight and I
Mm.
heard him, I think it was in front of all of us. He was just pretty much saying, "You've created a cult." And he just let her have it. And
Oh,
even
wow.
after that, I remember watching how she handled this, and she went to each of us and tried to create separation between
Mm.
us and him, saying like, yeah, this is typical. I've seen this behavior before. And this was her partner.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
I can't believe he straight up said to her, "You created a cult." That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be
Yeah, he
very
called it
curious.
out.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to know if they're still together.
I believe they are. So
Wow.
after I left a year later, I actually got a message from, I want to say somebody on LinkedIn. And she said, "Hey, this is who I am. I signed up to work with them. I
Mm,
realized partway through it that this was not a fit.
yeah.
And I they owe me $25,000. Can you help
Oh.
me? Can you help me retrieve it?" And I was like, "I'm no longer a part of this. I'm so sorry." And there was another woman that was also part of this group that left because they started seeing things like I did, playing out. And so we were on a thread together and they were sharing, everything that I experienced. And
Mm,
she was really like, wanting to be more vocal and to bring this to light. And I was like, you choose what's right for you. At this point, I was still like a year out and I was like, I've just like found my breath again. Like
yeah. Yeah.
but now 4 years later, I know how important this is to share, that I didn't just experience this to just hold it in myself, that it,
Yeah.
it needs to be, if anything, if it's planting a seed for people out there, that if they come into a situation, it doesn't have to be this extreme. It could be
Mm-hmm.
just a mentor you're working with or a teacher to, if anything arises that doesn't feel good in your system, feels out of alignment, like to really pause and to tune into like what is your own inner voice saying, not just what this person is,
Mm-hmm.
potentially sharing is what the truth is.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I think that's, underlying all of these insidious dynamics, there is a deep lesson here. So thank you for bringing that forward. What is the key to, releasing, to liberating ourselves from these dynamics is really not giving our power away to them, not giving our sovereignty away to them. Do you have any other advice for people who might feel trapped or confused by these dynamics?
Be patient with yourself, have compassion. Don't be afraid to choose yourself. This is not a selfish thing to choose yourself ever. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the biggest things I have stepped into over the last few years with this. And we are now in a time where discernment is everything.
Yeah.
If I was to focus my energy on anything right now, it would be to cultivate that muscle within myself.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
don't need anyone outside of yourself, truly. So if there's any mentor showing up saying, you're never going to get out of this without me, I'd turn around and walk the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Your most important relationship is source, God, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And that's a perfect segue to the final question, but the last question that's coming to mind at the moment. How did you rebuild your connection to source and your own truth?
Mhm. Well, I will say once I left and then I went into partnership, um, he had influence on me and I with my relationship with God. And so I really started to, I think before when I was with this group, it was almost like I felt like I had to go through her almost to connect to God. And so then I started to realize like I get to go straight to source.
Yeah.
And it it really has built over the last several years and it's been something I've just been devoted to and
Mm-hmm.
then allowed it to evolve. And before I may have like taken a lot more time to sit down and pray every day and really be intentional. And now the way that I interact with God is through everything. I treat life like a
Mm.
living prayer.
Yeah. 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 That's so beautiful. Yeah, it's fascinating. The way you put that is just so perfect too, because it's like you had to go through an intermediary to get to God. And that's exactly how religions operate as well.
Mhm.
So it's like these new age cults are just a replacement for these hierarchical religious structures that just it's the same dynamic wrapped up in a different wrapping paper and bow.
That's totally true.
It's really wild. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I could not resonate more with everything that you have shared. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of my other podcast episodes, but I've said numerous times discernment is the initiation of our time. And the way you put
Yes.
that, I was like, exactly. Discernment is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes some really difficult initiations for it to click in place. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say, you don't have to shame yourself for what your experiences are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a huge one for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like I went through something similar. It's like how did I not see it when I was in the midst of it with my dynamic? Why did I let this person be in my energy for so long? Why did I give so much
Yeah.
of my power away to, it was subtle, but I had pedestalized a bit. And so there
Mhm.
was shame, there was questioning, there was a self doubt. And then it took a while. Like I kind of knew, also similar to what you were saying, like I knew that I had to share my story because I knew that there would be people out there that would resonate who have gone through similar things, and maybe to prevent them from getting as deep into it. But it took me time. Like I kept saying, I'm going to share it. And then it took maybe like 6 months of me saying that,
Mhm.
maybe a year, until I could actually speak it out and put it out into the world. So that patience piece, I think, is also,
Yeah.
yeah,
Allowing
really
things
key.
to like really land and integrate and
Mm-hmm.
enough space to see it from a higher perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, and rebuilding that connection to source, it's like the God wound is what comes into play here too. It's like we feel abandoned by God a lot of the
Mhm.
time, and so like rebuilding that connection really takes a lot of that deeper inner work too in many cases. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Well, this is such a fascinating conversation. Thank you for opening up and sharing it with me and with the audience here. I think a lot of people are going to be able to connect and relate with this, especially where we're at right now with some things coming out in the collective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are ready to have these conversations.
Yeah, I think we are all ready for truth. We're
Hmm.
tired of living under illusion and mask and not knowing what we can trust.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, it's that broken trust piece that's so painful as well, because you think finally, like I feel seen, and then you give your trust to these individuals, and then that trust is just shattered. And that's for me, that was one of the biggest ones. It was trust in others as well as the self-trust, and then trust
Mhm.
in God. I was like, how did I get here? Haven't
Yeah.
I already been through enough?
Yes.
So yeah, it's wild what's happening. So, okay, how can people connect with you?
Instagram or Facebook is the best
Okay.
place. On
Yeah.
Instagram, my handle is Rose of Gigi. On Facebook, it's Gigi Allen. And yeah, anyone that wants to connect, you're also welcome to private message me as well. I know just even from what I've shared recently, there's a lot of people that have gone through this in their own version. So
Hmm.
it doesn't need to, we don't need to hide this
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. 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 It's like the comments that I've received on some of my previous episodes and videos on YouTube. It's like, oh, wow, a lot of people are really, really ready to have these conversations and really need, if it's not them themselves, they need people out there to be speaking up
Mhm.
because it does resonate with their experience and it's validating in a way. Not that we need the external validation, but because of the amount of gaslighting that often comes with these situations, it's really hard to grapple with, especially if you're still in it. So, thank you for being willing to share your voice and your experience. And of course, in the description below, I'll have all of Gigi's information linked so it's easy to find her. But yeah, yeah. Is there any final thoughts you would like to leave with us, with the audience here?
Nothing's coming to me right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we covered it.
I think we did too. Yeah, this was a beautiful conversation and a really important one. So, again, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you to the audience for tuning in, for receiving this. And yeah, absolutely. Both of our inboxes are open. And thank you so much for being here. The like, subscribes, comments, especially because these conversations are so important, are so appreciated. So, thank you. And onward and upward in love and light. I'll see you on the next episode of Heart of Truth podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Heart of Truth podcast with your host, Amanda Erin Kelly. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review on your favorite platform. And if you'd like to go deeper, grab your copy of my book, Let There Be Light, and join us inside the free community in Illumina Wisdom School, where you can access free resources to jumpstart your journey, such as a higher self activation and the Body Temple Blueprint Masterclass, as well as explore the plethora of resources, including Awakening Fundamentals and Luminary, my signature path to wholeness and mastery to help you become your own healer and sovereign authority. You can access everything at thisartcalledlife.com or find the links down in the show notes below. Until next time, onward and upward in love and light as we journey home to the heart of truth.